Hello, Booktube. It's Roz from Scatterhandling About the Books, and I'm here to do my Booktube Prize wrap-up video about the 6 books that I read for round one, the octafinals, I think Robert calls them. And so I'm recording this on the 28th of March, having now the ratings are complete, but I won't post it until the results of that round are revealed, because that's the deal. I'm getting my head around it. It was really interesting for me reading sort of 6 books over 2 months that were all things that I hadn't picked for myself and hadn't sort of pre-planned to read. That was an interesting experience in itself. The reason that I wanted to do the Booktube Prize is because apart from, not wanting to miss out on something that lots of people are doing, because, that sort of slightly feeble Booktube FOMO thing, but also because I suppose I'm not a huge follower of book prizes, but I'm always intrigued by how you'd set about kind of making judgments for them as a judge. So I thought it would be a really, and it's really easy to sit there and say, oh, how could they pick that? And why would, and what kind of discussion could they have had that made them, yeah. And I thought it would be salutary to have a go myself. And boy, did I find the rating bit hard. So I think I was lucky in the group that I got, because all 6 books in this group were like worthwhile reads. There was nothing in this group that I thought, oh my goodness, I'm dragging myself through this because it's a Booktube Prize book. Every single one of them I got a lot out of reading, and they were all at least a solid 4-star read by my kind of standards, as it were. Now, that meant that putting them in some sort of ranking from 1 to 6 was very challenging, and I've done it, and I'm going to talk about that. But I think it's important to say up front that my top 2 would always, I think, be my top 2, but the other 4, on a different day, I might have shifted those around a bit. It felt quite a brutal process, I suppose. So, what were the books, and how did I rate them? So I'm going to start at the bottom and work up. But as I say, allowing for the fact that this is a bit not random, but not. I could talk myself into putting any of these books into a slightly different order, which is kind of daft, isn't it? But you have to just make a choice. So number 6 for me, the least good, was Redhead by the Side of the Road by Anne Tyler. Now, it's funny to describe it as the least good, because it's just Anne Tyler doing her Anne Tyler thing. She's a veteran author. She knows what she's about. She can create characters. She can create atmosphere. She can do description. Her prose is nice. Everything works absolutely fine. But for me, it was a bit, so what? I suppose that would be the fairest way to describe why it's the bottom of my list. It had a slightly insubstantial quality. It was quite short. It was sort of, I was engaged with it as I was reading it, but at the end it felt relatively forgettable, even though Anne Tyler was doing her Anne Tyler-y thing of really getting inside, the head of her main character, and sort of writing about like a kind of someone you could get alongside, but wasn't altogether likable, and was slightly making a mess of his life in a subtle way. It's an interesting thing to do in a book, and she did it well, but still, bottom of my list. Okay. Next one going up was The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. Now, Anne Tyler obviously is American, from Baltimore. St. John Mandel is from Canada. And one of the things that I liked best about this book was the parts that were set on the far west of Canada, on Vancouver Island, and some of the sort of description of the atmosphere of like a small town there, and yes, this sort of extraordinary, rather wonderful hotel built in the middle of nowhere. I really, I was captured by that. This is a novel about a Ponzi scheme. I'm sure you all know what a Ponzi scheme is. It was like what it's where someone is taking people's money and kind of pretending to invest it, but actually they're not really investing it. They're just taking the next person's money and using that to pay the payouts to the first lot. So it's a house of cards. It's built on nothing, and interesting choice of subject for a novel. There was also a novel about family relationships, and and sort of like impact of drug addiction of one family member. That's something that I'm getting a bit bored of, actually. But a Ponzi scheme, yeah, that was interesting. Why is this book towards the bottom of my 6? Because of the ghost story element, I suppose. I mean, for some people, that will be the thing that gave the book its little extra sparkle, but just didn't for me. Yeah, I found it slightly twee and irritating. Yeah, but the book as a whole was not twee and irritating. It was the writing about the world of the very rich, the super rich, as almost being like another country. That was interesting, and writing about how people deal with the sudden loss of that was interesting. So not a bad book, a good book, but yeah, ghosty bits. Woo woo. No, not dear. Took away from it for me. Book number 4, weirdly, in retrospect, may end up being one of my favourite books out of the 6, even though it's not the one that I would pick as the best. And that's Djinn Patrol on the Purple Line by Deepa Anappara. And Indian author, obviously, though I think she's living in the UK now. She's working at the University of East Anglia or studying there. But she used to be a journalist. For 11 years, she was a journalist in Delhi and Bombay. She wrote a lot, as I understand it, of kind of like social analysis sort of journalism. She interviewed a lot of slum dwellers, street children, and that is the material that she draws on for her book. And I've heard some kind of like criticisms of this book that it might be a bit of a Slumdog Millionaire, thing where it's like a kind of middle class writer successfully writing a book about the lives of India's sort of like really poor, and is there something slightly distasteful about that? I didn't feel that way about this book. Now, obviously, I'd be really interested to listen to some Indian booktubers' sort of perspective on that, and I think it might have been Josna who kind of flagged up that maybe it was a bit of a Slumdog Millionaire sort of type thing. Yeah, I should have gone back to look, but no doubt, perhaps please comment, tell me what you think. I felt that she approached this with real heart, that she really wanted to give a voice to those the people living in that part that you find in every Indian city, or like multiple areas where you've got like a sort of slum in effect, almost like right bang up against these sort of very like relatively newly built, smart, enclosed, expensive housing estates. I saw it when I was there. You could just, yeah. And the way she really wanted to express how the lives of people, and particularly children, are not valued as they should be, and not be protected as they should be by the state or by the police, and she does that really well. It was a book that I has a tremendous sense of the physicality of the place that it's writing about. I could, feel it, smell it. I was in it. She gets the little details that bring something to life for you in a really satisfying way. And I think the reason that it's not at the top of my list, probably two reasons. It feels kind of quite first booky, and it's got some of those like those first book errors with maybe someone that's error is the wrong word. I mean, who am I to say? I've never written a book, but like someone who's doing their creative writing degree and has to pull together their book, and sometimes you can see the work. That's not, as I said, that's maybe an unfair criticism, but it's why it wouldn't be, didn't sort of hit the top of my list. The other thing I would say is that writing a book for adults through the voices of children is challenging. And I think that she did quite a good job of it, but it's still, there's always going to be moments when that's either a bit irritating or frustrating or feels slightly false. Moments when you use the children as unreliable narrators. They're like the sort of the innocence that just describe their lives, and that's almost that's the strength. But sometimes you can't quite pull it off. So yeah, that's why it's number 4. Number 3 is Weather by Jenny Offill. And this was a book that actually, you see, it's interesting, isn't it? I actually didn't like this book as much as I liked Djinn Patrol. Why have I put it higher? I think because, and it's probably, this is me and a bit stupid maybe, like I had to work a bit harder to get the full experience of reading this book, to get what she was doing, to follow it. Her style is very rendered down. You get these like little paragraphs, and as a reader you have to do the work of almost assembling those into the whole. That's not to say, I mean, it has a narrative thread. It's not piecemeal, and characters emerge quite strongly. But I think I quite enjoy being made to do some of the labour when I'm reading, and that's what she made me do. It's kind of like the opposite of the Anne Tyler, where you just sort of sit there and lap it up. Yeah, I had to put some of me into reading this book, and so perversely I valued it a little bit higher. Yeah, you can comment and tell me that that's totally ridiculous. I like the fact that the protagonist is a librarian. That's always appealing to me. Well, it is. Yeah, it just is. I liked that she was juggling. She almost has too many people to care for in her life, and the way she, it's a kind of classic woman's experience, and I enjoyed watching her do that and how that was expressed in the book. I found it that I felt that the way she was having to her second job is responding to the emails for an ex-professor of hers who's like who's become a bit of a pundit and a futurologist. Is that a thing? Yeah, it is, isn't it? It was a good way of commenting on kind of certain current issues like climate change, climate disaster, like Trump's America. She's an American author. Every now and then it got a little bit worthy, I sort of thought, oh yeah, one thing I really dislike in a book is when I feel like a writer's telling me what to think, and there were times when she veered into that, but overall good book, quite short, similar length actually to the Anne Tyler, but felt perhaps longer because you had to put more into it. Yeah. Next book, wonderful book, Love After Love by Ingrid Persaud, and she's an author of Trinidadian origin who now lives in the UK. And this was almost like this was a really emotional book. And I really enjoyed the fact that it was a really emotional book. It's a challenge to read. Was a challenge to read for me. And, I liked it a little bit of a challenge, because she wonderfully writes it in a kind of colloquial language of Trinidad. And you have to get the voice, and until you kind of settle into that voice, you're not quite at home in the book. But once you have, then you are. It's a book obviously about love, about relationships, about kind of making a family from both blood relations and not, who matters in our life, and how do we deal with that? How do we honor that? How do we fail that? Yeah, all of that I liked. I felt like well, that one of the things that I enjoy in a book is being taken to a place that I don't know. I don't know Trinidad, and I felt like I was living there with the characters. And one of the characters goes and lives in New York, and that's a more familiar place to me. And the fact that that felt like a kind of a realistic perspective on sort of immigrant experience in New York gave me confidence that I was really getting a realistic picture of Trinidad as well. Yeah, which I'm not familiar with. Why is this not my top book? I think, and again, I always feel like ridiculous criticizing, other people's amazing perseverance to write a novel, and to sort of then say, oh well, this is a little bit, but I felt it was a bit too long. Again, it's essentially a first book. The first novel. She's written short stories before, and I think there was a huge bidding war for it. I felt it could have had just a bit more editing, tighten it up a bit. Something that I heard Barb of the font say about this book was that one of the things that slightly spoilt it for her was she had this wonderful phrase. It was full of carpet biting sex. Now that didn't bother me at all about it. I thought it was actually really quite important and integral to the book, because it's looking about different forms of love, and erotic love is one of those. So that wasn't a problem. But there were moments when you get you get the book from three different perspectives, and there were moments when it slightly not dragged is too strong a word, but it slightly kind of slowed up for me in a way that, yeah, it was a bit frustrating. It was a bit too long of her and the estrangement between her and her son, say, and then other bits that are very, whooshed over very quickly. Although, having said that, that kind of those changes of pace and those changes of location and those changes of perspective and time period are also the book's strength. So, yeah, a fine book. And I've heard some other people on Booktube rave about it, and I understand why. So, what was my number one? My number one was Actress by Anne Enright. Now, I have to admit to being probably coming to this book with a positive attitude, because I've read a couple of Anne Enright's books before and really enjoyed them. Like, say, Tyler, she's an experienced author, and when you start a book and you read just the first paragraph or two and you think, I'm in safe hands. This is someone who really knows what they're doing when they write a novel. They are going to take me on a good trip, and I'm not going to have to worry that I'm going to get too much of their creative writing course, or too much of their or some political message also that they want to give, or I'm just going to have a wonderful immersion in these characters, this world, this family, this chunk of society, these places, and she completely delivers on that. Irish writer, lovely, lovely sentences, lovely, brilliant characterization. It's a story about a mother and daughter relationship, and I suppose it kind of looks at Irish identity, Irish womanhood. What it means, what it meant in the 20th century to be an Irish woman, but never in a ploddy way. It's never obvious that that's what she's doing, if you know what I mean. She's it's all done through the character and the plot, and almost with unwavering success. I like very much that it's non-linear. Again, if you've seen me sort of talk about books before, you'll know I like a non-linear plot a lot. She is so clever, Enright, because she doesn't only go back and forth in time. She actually kind of like changes the register that she's writing in. Let me think. Let me how to explain that. So there's moments when it's like the author is talking to her husband, and sort of it's like a kind of almost like a kind of personal conversation, when in her head with him. There's moments when it's as if she's writing a memoir, a biography of her mother, the actress, and she kind of goes into that mode. And when she's talking about her grandparents, say, and you can feel it kind of becomes a little bit more formal. There's moments when it's as if she's writing her own memoir, and you get her, deepest feelings. It goes. Oh, I just have to apologise. I've put my microphone nearer my mouth because a couple of people have said that my videos are a bit too quiet, but because it's there, when I gesture, I have a tendency to hit it, and I bet that's going to make a kind of like an irritating noise on the video. So apologies for that. But that's what's going on, because I can't not gesture when I'm talking about things that I really enjoy. Yes. So back to the book. It's a book where I was so lost in reading it that I felt like it was about real people. Yes, it is that a good quality? Yes, I think it is. It felt real. These were like real lives that I was looking in on through the author, but a different experience. And it's also about fame and the impact of fame, and yes, and how we invent ourselves, maybe. And how Ireland had to invent itself as independent from England, from colonial domination, and sort of I discover Irish TV, Irish films, how to, Ireland's always had the most incredibly rich culture, but that sort of saying, okay, now this is different and distinct. This is us on our own and separate. Yeah, honestly, so much in this book that I could go on about. I'm going to stop here because this is going on too long. I really enjoyed my Booktube Prize experience. I'm not offered to judge the next round because I want a bit more freedom in what I read, but I hope to come back and do some more. And I'm particularly looking forward to next year, when there's going to be a third. This year there's fiction and non-fiction, but next year there's going to be fiction in translation as well. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And thank you, Robert, for your brilliant organisation.